Here is a statistic that might blow your mind. In a 2020 study, over 85% of women said they don't feel turned on until they are already engaged in physical or emotional connection. That means that most women do not feel aroused before sex starts. Arousal builds during sex. So my name's Hannah, also known as the Libido Fairy, and today we're talking about how female arousal actually works. It's one of the most misunderstood parts of sexuality, and understanding it can completely change your relationship with sex, your body, and your partner. So let's start with what most people get wrong. We are taught that arousal is supposed to be instant, that you should just know when you're in the mood, that you should feel turned on before anything starts, and if you don't, you must be broken. And that's the belief that so many of us carry. But here's the truth. That model of arousal, where desire just hits out of nowhere and you're immediately ready to go, is based on how spontaneous desire works. And believing that that's the only way for arousal to happen is based on an outdated science and a male-centric model of sensuality. And while it's valid, it is not the only way that desire works. In fact, for about 85% of women, like I mentioned at the beginning, arousal happens after physical touch, emotional closeness, or sensory cues. So it's called responsive desire, and it's also equally valid. So if you are sitting around just waiting to feel in the mood to initiate sex, you might be waiting forever. And if you don't feel in the mood out of nowhere, you might not have low libido. You might just have responsive desire. This misunderstanding leads to so much pressure and shame and rejection and confusion, and it is one of the biggest reasons why so many women feel disconnected from their libido. So let's actually break down what does spark arousal in women, what happens in women's bodies when she becomes aroused, and how long that process actually takes. So let's start with what actually happens in the body when a woman starts becoming aroused. So during arousal, a few key things are happening physiologically. So blood flow increases to the genitals, especially to the clitoris, the labia, and the vaginal walls. So there's enhanced sensation and pleasure because of that blood flow. The clitoris swells, similar to how a penis becomes erect, because they're made of the same type of tissue. The vaginal walls begin to lubricate naturally, the pelvic floor muscles begin to relax and engage, the size of the vagina widens and lengthens, and the cervix moves back to make room for penetration so that it is not painful. Breathing deepens, heart rate increases, the nipples become erect, skin might become more sensitive or flushed. But here's the kicker. For many women, that whole process can take anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes of stimulation and engagement to reach full physical arousal. It is crucial that you think of those 20 minutes as a fun, exciting time to explore rather than a problem or a hurdle to get over, because there's so much happening biologically that makes sex more pleasurable for women. And if you don't put in that time, the likelihood of vaginal tearing and pain, numbness, distraction, tight pelvic floor muscles, and overall discomfort is very high, which can lead to not wanting sex. So let's take a look about how we've been taught to think about arousal and what is actually more accurate. So the Masters and Johnson model, which you've probably heard of before, breaks down arousal into 4 linear phases. So excitement, plateau, orgasm, and resolution. And this model is based on male arousal and assumes that desire comes first, then arousal, and then orgasm, and then you're done. But women don't always work like that. That's where Bassins Model comes in, and it's the circular model of female sexual response. What's different about that model is that desire doesn't always come first. Women may start with more neutral willingness or a desire for emotional closeness, and then arousal builds during the experience, especially when there's emotional intimacy and trust and pleasurable context and attunement, and then pleasure and arousal and finally sexual desire after may kick in as the body responds. So this is not about a race to orgasm or to a finish or to arousal. It's all about the connection, the presence, the exploration. So if you're someone who doesn't feel horny out of the blue, it's not a problem. Like, that's just responsive desire. And it means that you might need more context, more buildup, and more slowness to actually fully engage. Now, we're about to look at 3 big factors that can influence arousal for women and can increase it. But before I do, if you're enjoying the video so far, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more on sex, intimacy, and relationships. Okay, now 3 factors that can really increase arousal, especially in long-term relationships. Number one, emotional connection. So if you are not feeling emotionally seen, safe, or connected in your relationship, you're probably going to have a hard time feeling aroused. This is especially true in longer-term relationships where emotional intimacy sets the foundation for physical intimacy. Connection creates safety, and safety opens the door to more pleasure, more exploration, more play, and expansive or even kinky sex. A major critical factor here is around the feeling of pressure. So feeling like there's not pressure to have sex and that there's true depth of safety and care for your pleasure is really, really helpful to feeling emotionally connected. Number two is physical attunement. So quick, fast, kind of goal-oriented touch that just happens with the intention of trying to get to the point or hurry up into penetration is not going to cut it. Most women need slow, intentional, attuned touch without any pressure to perform. Foreplay is not a warm-up, it's often the main event. It's where the nervous system shifts into pleasure mode, and for so many women, penetration is not the most pleasurable part of sex because the stimulation that women need to feel pleasure and orgasm happens around the 2 inches of the vaginal opening and the clitoris. And if that's not being stimulated directly during penetration, it's probably not going to be like 10 out of 10 orgasm-worthy pleasure. So attuning to what does actually give you pleasure during sex is really important for staying aroused and getting aroused. Number 3 is psychological engagement. So fantasy, curiosity, novelty, these things aren't just extra, they're essential. Arousal lives in the mind as much as it lives in the body, and our brain is our largest sex organ. So your thoughts, your environment, your imagination, the emotional context you're creating in your brain, they all matter. That's why things like sexting, reading erotica, intentional daydreaming can help build arousal over time. Dirty talk, hearing the words I love you, making sounds, music, or some other kind of psychological contributor can also add to arousal. But this also is why the wrong music, intrusive thoughts, distraction, or a busy mind can reduce arousal. Engaging the brain in the present moment with pleasure and regulating your nervous system really help to have more arousal psychologically as well. So here's the biggest takeaway. Arousal does not work like a light switch. It works like a dimmer. And for most women, it's responsive, emotional, and contextual. So if you feel like you've been waiting to feel in the mood before you start, or you've been blaming yourself for not getting turned on fast enough, you can just stop doing that. Start with curiosity instead. What makes your body feel safe? What makes you feel seen? What kind of touch feels really good to you? And when you let go of the pressure to be spontaneous or sexy on demand, you make space for real, sustainable turn-on to unfold. If this opened your eyes, leave a comment and let me know what you learned. And if you want to dive deeper onto how to have more satisfying sex for women, check out this next video. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one.